Hi everybody, happy Pakistani Independence Day. I wanted to celebrate and reflect on Pakistan and what it means to me and so many people. And when remembering Pakistan and talking about partition, I wanted to reflect on the life of Muhammad Iqbal, who made this vision possible. He's well known, but my fear is that for the younger generation, we start to lose the message that he left us. So I just want to reflect on his life and speak about his connection to the creation of Pakistan. So Iqbal was a great poet and philosopher, and his life and works have really shaped Muslim thought and living history, especially in the subcontinent. Allama, as he was fondly known, Iqbal was born in 1877 in Sialkot in Pakistan. He was born at crossroads of two worlds and not long after the official collapse of the Mughal Empire. So on one side, he remembered the past glory and power of Muslims in India, but on the other side, he experienced their lowliness, their lack of education, and an inability to adapt to change. In his early life, Iqbal was more of an Indian nationalist, and his poems at the time reflected that, such as Tarane-e-Hind or the Indian Anthem, Naya Shavala, a New Shiva altar, and many more. But after going to Europe to study law, his outlook changed from Indian nationalist to staunch believer in Muslim unity. The catalyst for this change was that he was exposed to the Western world and the power base of colonialism, which at the time was spreading like a cancer across the Muslim world. After Iqbal's return to India in 1911, his writing became more political, and he was driven to awaken his community from what he perceived was a deep slumber. And he wanted to remind them of their great history, which was dominated by faith, tolerance, open-mindedness, and an ability to adapt to change. So poems like the Rani Milli or the Islamic Anthem came about, and he wrote many more poems and many writings about the unity of Muslims. He was brought up at a time where Muslim conquest and advancement in history were not a distant memory, and it was hard for him to digest the absence of self-expression and dignity of Muslims in India and worldwide. He tried to make sense of what was happening, the declining position of Muslims, and he put his ideas and thoughts into the most beautiful Urdu and Persian poetry. Before I studied the poems in Urdu, I appreciated them, but I couldn't connect as much as when I studied them and understood them in Urdu, and I'm sure in Persian, and it's a whole another level and a mind-blowing experience, and you can really connect deeply with his words. Although Iqbal died before India's partition took place, his connection to this history is pivotal. He is known as the visionary behind Pakistan. This was because in Iqbal's presidential address at the All India Muslim League Conference in 1930 in Allahabad, he called for Muslims in India to have autonomy and self-governance. After Iqbal's revolutionary address, the idea of a separate nation for Muslims in India took flight, and it was eventually followed through by Quaid-e-Azam, Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Whether Iqbal or Jinnah would have wanted Pakistan as it was carved out by the British is a separate contentious discussion for another time. The British basically came and within 36 days drew a line through the middle of India and left it rapidly in a mess. Jinnah called it a moth-eaten truncated Pakistan, but the beauty of Pakistan and the people is that despite all these hardships and struggles that we had to go through as a community, Pakistan has made a positive impact on the world stage, from education, research, cuisine, language, arts and heritage. Perhaps we haven't done the best job in PRing ourselves. and a lot of our heritage has been appropriated. But that again is part of the humbleness and the genuineness of it. I am very proud of Pakistan, the ideology behind it and its resilience. As a British Pakistani, some of the actions of Pakistan, especially in recent years, has been one of pride for me. For example, the way Pakistan offered help and support to India during the COVID pandemic. Iqbal and Jinnah were both frustrated at the Indian National Congress's dealings with Muslims in India and excluding them from the independence movement through the use of Hindu idioms and references. And the main people that were leading the Congress at that time were Nehru, the first Prime Minister of India, and Gandhi. Iqbal was equally frustrated at the Muslims in India for their passiveness and the part that they played in their own decline. Iqbal's poems repeatedly addressed the themes of Islamic greatness from the past and the contrast that to the conditions of Muslims in his time. His famous classic poem, Shikwa, or Complaint, is a grievance to God about the conditions of Muslims. Soon after, he followed that up with Jawab-e-Shikwa, or the response to the complaint, where God responds and blames Muslims for their own conditions and losing sight of God's message and the essence of the religion. Iqbal was driven to revolutionize Muslim thought. He believed strongly that Muslims had to move with the times and embrace modernization, but without forgetting their Islamic core. He believed that modernization and Islam were totally compatible, and that change was essential to growth for individuals and the wider Muslim community. Although he advocated for Muslims in India to have the right to self-expression, it did not take away from his belief in the unity of all human beings. Iqbal clearly had the foresight to realise that leaving Muslims as a minority in India would put them at risk in the future and prevent them from practising their faith and culture freely. I strongly believe that Iqbal's vision of autonomy for Muslims was mainly for their protection and freedom. We can see now in the way that Indian Muslims are being treated by the right-wing government in India, and that was a big fear for Muslims at that time. Both Iqbal and Quaid-e-Azam did not, however, advocate for divisions along the lines of nationalism, ethnic groupings, and tribalism. Iqbal certainly saw these actions as a legacy of colonialism and the root cause of problems in the world. Iqbal's poetry and philosophy were part of his message and gift to the world. He passed away in April 1938, but the legacy of his actions and thinking live on to this day, not least the nation-state of Pakistan. Iqbal's tomb contains a Persian inscription which perfectly sums up his core belief of unity and progression. We belong to the garden and descend from the same ancestors. Distinctions of colour and race are forbidden to us. We are the harvests of a new spring.